Welcome to Fitzdog Radio. Your host, Greg Fitzsimmons, sits before you, freshly buzzed head, new jacket I just picked up at a surf shop in town that went out of business. Bittersweet. We'll miss them. But, hey, got some fucking nice deals. Hey, now. I'm out of quarantine. I know I mentioned to you last time I'd been in Cleveland at Hilarities, and my wife insisted, no, and I agreed to go back into quarantine in the guest house, which was it was 5 or 6 days I was back there, and there was a lot of furious masturbation, pot smoking, and watching the Eric Andre show, often at the same time. That Eric Andre show, holy shit. If you compare, you know how they pair wines with certain entrees at restaurants? If you compare marijuana with a TV show, I think it's the Eric Andre show. It's fucking bananas. He just comes out and destroys the set, and it stays at that pitch the entire time. It's insane. So much respect for that guy. I know I've talked about the show before, but if you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu. You can watch all the episodes. And marijuana you can get from your local dealer. Or if you're in certain states like Colorado, Oregon, California, Washington, D.C., you can pick up some marijuana. I suggest it's sativa. Nice. Quarantine was, I meditated every day. I worked out every day. Got the kettlebells back there. I got the chin-up bar. I got the rubber bands. I got the yoga mat. I got these push-up handles. I'm fucking ripped, baby. And the meditation, so it's good. It was a good week. I turned a what could have been a rough week into a good week. But it was hard because no hugs. I got no hugs from the family. And anyway, whatever. Who cares? I got through it. People have gone through a lot worse. People that are working in hospitals have to stay in another house from their families entirely for months at a time. So who the fuck am I? That's my big hang up in life. I always feel like no matter how bad things might be for me, it's worse for somebody else. And maybe that's the key to life, is always compare yourself to people that are worse off than you are. And that may be a stretch sometimes. I mean, if you're rich, it's almost anybody. If you're poor, say you're poor and, you know, you had an abusive spouse who left, now you got a kid you can't afford, and your neighbors play fucking house music until 4 a.m. You got to think hard. You got to start thinking, well, I think I got it bad. What about those Pakistani kids that are picking through the garbage dump to get pieces of tin so they can buy half a bowl of rice for the family? You got to keep going down. So maybe that's my lesson for today. Did a show last night down in Irvine. The Irvine Improv set up a car, a drive-in show on the roof of the parking garage. And they had a giant screen, and there were probably 150 cars. I didn't know. I thought I was going to show up and it was going to be chairs. I didn't know people would be in their cars. And they'd set their radio to a certain channel and so that they can hear the show. But I can't hear them. They're laughing inside their cars, windows up with air conditioning, and all I got is the front row. Anybody with a pickup truck could park in the front row. They backed in and then sat in the beds of their pickup trucks. So essentially, you've got Trump supporters in the front row because that's the only people that are driving pickup trucks in California. And I didn't do any political stuff. I don't anyway. You know me. Keeping it safe. Someday I'll look back on this and say, you were on the wrong side of history, Greg. You didn't speak out. And then they came for the comedians, which I think might be the name of my guest book. Judy Gold is my guest. She'll be on in just a moment. So anyway, so people would honk. If instead of an applause break, people would honk their horns. And I noticed, like, if I did a sex joke, if I did something nasty, if I did something smart and clever, nothing. Quiet. No hecklers, thank God. You can't get heckled. That's the best part. And if they do, you just call AAA. Get a pickup truck, fucking tow them out. No bouncers needed. Sarah was on the show. Doug, Kurt, Donnell. It's a good show. Anyway, what else is going on? Let's get to it. Some say whats. Let's do one say what and one overheard, and then get into the show. I'm tired of these long intros. This is a say what. This is from Skirish is the guy. Skyrush is the guy's name. He's Scotch-Irish. Father's Inuk, which is, I think, Canadian indigenous people are Canucks or Inuks. A couple of bits of wisdom from my Papa Allie, who had Scottish heritage. Quote, don't make bets or start fights you can't win. That's right, baby. That's right. Oh, and never ask a question you don't know the answer to. That's what I'll add that to that piece of wisdom. Don't make bets you can't. You know, I got challenged to a boxing match by my old producer, John Matthews. Now, I want to fight this guy, but I had a shoulder issue, so I couldn't fight him right away. I'm dying to fight this guy, and we have to push the fight. But I know I can win that one. And as far as bets, I bet Mike Gibbons $50 a game all season. I get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I believe that Brady and Gronkowski, although he's underused Gronkowski this year, I think they're going to take that team and get him into the playoffs. He also said, quote, don't fight ugly people. They have nothing left to lose. Yes, absolutely true. If you see a guy and even if it's a small guy, don't fight a small guy. He's got anger. He's got something to prove. Ugly guy's got something to prove. He's angry. He doesn't care if you fuck up his face. It's already fucked up. Here's an overheard. This is from Scott K. He says, I'm waiting for a takeout order at a local restaurant when I hear a white guy in his 30s say to the cashier, quote, I'm just here to pick up a DoorDash order. While I'm waiting, what beers do you have? He went on to purchase and drink his beer while waiting for a takeout order. Yeah, I can see that. DoorDash. You're dashing. That's the thing is he's driving fast, too. He's drunk dashing. I don't know what the tipping policy is for you. When somebody brings food to, like, there's 3 levels of tipping. There's the restaurants where you order and they give it to you and you tip them 10%. Now, if I'm at a table and there's a waiter, that's 20%. If you fucking get the food, get in your car, use gas, park the car, have to find me, that's 35%. I give a 35% tip to delivery guys. It's always guys, rarely a woman delivering food. All right, listen, folks. Couple quick announcements from me. I'm going to be at the Tampa Bay Side Splitters on November 19th to the 21st. This is a club I've only worked a couple times, but it has fast worked its way into my top 5 clubs. Great fucking joint. Good management. And so we're looking forward to some good shows there. Come on out. Go to Fitzdog.com to get your tickets. And I should be doing Mike Calta's show while I'm in town. Looking forward to that. Premium subscriptions for the podcast. There's 860-something episodes at this point. Get them all for like $19 a year. Or, I don't know, $5 a month, whatever it is. Go back and listen to me and Dave Attell, Louis C.K., Stephen Wright, Sarah Silverman, Jimmy Kimmel, Carl Reiner. It goes on and on. Zach Galifianakis. So check that out. Also, Sunday Papers on Sunday with Mike Gibbons. Childish with Allison Rosen on Wednesdays. And then don't forget to pick yourself up a Grapefruit Simmons t-shirt. Just got a new fucking truckload into those babies. Let's move them. Wear it. All right. My guest today is a dear friend of mine from New York, who is was always one of the power hitters in the New York lineups. Just a fucking great comic, ballsy, funny, real New Yorker. And she just, she's at HBO specials, won a couple Emmys. She writes for TV shows. And I had her on yesterday, and we just had such a blast. I know you'll enjoy this. Here's my conversation with the great Judy Gold. Welcome to Fitzdog Radio. It's the Judy Show.
It's Judy's Show. Yeah.
Look at the excitement in her eyes. This is a woman who's on a mission.
I am.
I'm so fucking jealous that you're in the Cape in the fall. That is just...
Greg, I've never been able to be in the Cape in the fall because, as you know, I have children and we always had to go back.
Right.
Because they have this thing called school.
Right.
And now one's in college and one's 24. So
wait,
and
you
there's
have
a pandemic.
one. You have one. Is it Ben that's Owen's age? My son Owen's age?
He's 19.
Yeah, Owen is 19 also.
Where's Owen at school?
He is going to DePaul in Chicago.
Oh, that's a great school.
Yeah, so it's all online, but he's living in Chicago with some other guys in an apartment. They're being super safe, but they're, he wanted to at least be in that city and pretend that he's having a real college experience.
I know a lot of Elisa's niece did that. Ben's at Tulane.
Oh, okay.
And he plays basketball for them. So
is he in New Orleans now?
Yeah, he's in New Orleans. He had the COVID, he came home, and now he doesn't have the COVID, and he's in New Orleans. Yeah.
Did he get it bad?
He didn't get it bad. He lost his sense of taste and smell, and had
so it was easier to be around you then.
Huh?
So it was easier to be around you.
I didn't get it, and I wasn't with him. He got it, and I was here, and his roommate at Tulane got it, so they made him either go home and quarantine or go to the quarantine dorm. And he said, I'll go home. And he comes home, even though he was negative, he tested positive like a week later. And then my other son, Henry, tested positive. He was really sick. And then my ex, who had a dinner party, so she got the sickest, I think. And her wife she got sick, but not that sick. Yeah, it affected everyone differently. And I was going to go home to see him, and Elisa, my lover, was like, "Don't go." I'm glad I didn't go.
Wait, so Elisa's your same-sex lover. How long have you guys been together?
Same sex. She has a vagina. We've been together 13 and a half years.
Damn.
And she has a vagina, and I have a vagina.
Now, do you share them?
We share the vaginas. Elisa, can you stop slamming the fucking door? I'm on a podcast. Well, we won't be sharing a vagina today, obviously. But yes, we share vaginas. She plays with mine. I play with hers. Mm-hmm. They play with each other. But, that was easier when I was younger and more flexible.
Yes. Now, you talk about in the book that you don't orgasm as easily as you did when you were younger.
I never mentioned that in my book at all.
It was a throwaway line, but it was something about orgasming, and you did put in the line, it was easier then.
I did not. What are you fucking talking
because
about?
I thought that women orgasmed better when they got older, that men peaked early and then women came into it later.
I had way better orgasms older than I did younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I have this philosophy with you guys and your cocks, okay? You have your cocks. They start, exploding when you're like, what, 12, 13, whatever, 14. Yeah. Okay. And then, it gets to the point where it doesn't work anymore. So you get this fucking Viagra, which I don't understand. If you can't get a hard-on and you get a fake hard-on, how is that fun? Is that still fun, or is it just a power thing? And it's like, you know what? You had your fun. in your teens, 20s, 30s, 40s. Women have had your fucking kids for you and all that. And then, let us enjoy.
Yeah.
Let us
enjoy. I think it's like when you see that middle-aged guy who's bald with the ponytail and he's driving a Ferrari. Yeah, that's Viagra. Exactly. That's Viagra. He's never going to go over 30 miles an hour in that car.
Right.
He's sitting on 505 horsepower, and he's going 30 in traffic in Marina Del Rey. He's divorced twice.
And he can't get it up.
I've used Viagra. I used it twice.
And?
It's exactly what you're describing. It feels phony. It feels like you're fucking somebody with a puppet on your hand.
Ew.
And you can't, in porn.
Wait, so can you come on Viagra?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it's not the same kind of coming, right?
No, because
it's all fake.
You don't have, it's like you ever swing a baseball bat or a softball bat that's too big and you don't really have control of your timing with the swing. Yes. That's what it feels like. The bat's too big. And in porn, it's looked down upon to use Viagra because the money shot needs to be done. The director needs to say, okay, money shot, and then you've got 30 seconds. With Viagra, you can't control it. Yeah.
It's so great that you're a parent and you know so much about porn. I think that's great.
I hosted the Porn Awards twice.
You did?
Yes.
Did you know all the people?
Yeah. I got to know, Belladonna.
No, I'm not a porn person.
No.
I know I should be, but I'm not. I mean, I shouldn't be. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not.
Read a book.
Yeah, I'm not as into it as I used to be. And the worst is like, I was watching it not that long ago, and then I finished watching it, wink, wink, and I closed the window to my internet, and I forgot that my desktop photo is my kids, and they're looking at me.
Oh, that's great.
And the shame of that moment.
Great. That is fucking perfect.
I realize I need to change my desktop photo to something.
Was your hand on your dick when the photo of your kids?
Oh, no. I had a greasy rag in my hand at that point.
All right, then. Okay.
All right.
I've just become a bigger lesbian after this conversation.
Yeah?
I'm more of a lesbian.
I try to reconfirm women's belief in their lesbianism.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So, so many things I want to ask you. Judy and I go way back to the New York City comedy scene. I got to New York City probably in 91. You'd already been there for probably a good decade at that point. Would you start in like 84?
I did my first set in 1981.
Wow.
At Rutgers. I was still in college. I graduated in 84. But I had done some sets in New York before that. So 85-ish was... Dar, I'm on a fucking a fucking podcast. This is what I like.
How did you write a book in this house?
No one was here. No one was here. Yeah, so I guess I was doing I was ditzing around. Here's what happened. I did a show someone dared me to do a show at Rutgers. And then they had
By the way, I'm glad you say Rutgers. Most Jersey girls say Rutgers.
Rutgers.
Without the T.
That's South Jersey. Rutgers. Yeah. So they did this thing called campus comedy, which they would never do now because everyone's a fucking snowflake baby.
Yeah.
But anyway, and you'll love this story. So I won some talent thing, and I got to do a set for campus comedy. And these were the people on the show. Larry Amoros was the host.
What club was this at?
What?
What club was this at?
No, this was at Rutgers. They
would
go
at
to
Rutgers.
campuses
Okay.
And they would have a talent, and then you got to do 5 minutes on their show if you won, and I won. So it was me. It was Larry Amoros was the host. Bill Sheft, and Adrian Tolsch.
Wow. Who were married at the time, right?
Yes. And I went on stage and I did my 5 minutes, and it was like in one of the, I don't know, like a center, a student center, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember because my parents were there, but, and I did my 5 minutes, and after my 5 minutes, they told me I was funny. That's when I knew, like, I was. Bill Sheft and Adrian and Larry were like, "You're really funny." And Bill still tells a story because he remembers, that day. And Adrian was the MC on Monday nights at Catch a Rising Star, right? And she's like, I MC Monday nights, which was the open mic night.
Yep.
And she's like, come down and I'll put you on. And of course, I'm 19 years old and I think, oh, I'm getting on a Catch a Rising Star,
Yeah.
So of course I go down as many Monday nights as I can. I go up to the city and, I'm standing there. This is when the shows went till 3 a.m.
Yep.
Remember this?
I remember this. I used to drive down from Boston to hang out on Monday nights at Catch. That was the place.
And you'd stand in the back. And I just remember I saw so many fucking amazing. I mean, I remember I would see people and then I'd see them on the Tonight Show. Like a couple. I remember Ronnie Shakes. Remember him?
Yep.
I don't know if you remember him. I remember the first time I saw Carol Leifer walk in, I was like, oh my God. Paula, Larry David, Joy Behar, Susie Essman. But it was amazing. It was really friggin' amazing. And so, then I graduated college. So I did, and it was the 80s. So it was just the beginning of the boom. So I could go to bars were having happy hours. You could I remember once I moved to New York in 84 and I was, I had a day job. And then at night, I would go down to Wall Street to some fucking bar and do a set. And then you could do 5 shows in a night. It was ridiculous.
Right.
So we all got good pretty quickly,
and the shows were good. They were, at that point, all you had to do was put a sign up in front of a fucking Chinese restaurant or a bar, and people packed it.
Packed it. People were dying for it.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting too? I know you remember this, but and I don't think people realize this, that, the MC is so important to a show.
Right.
And at Catch in the 80s, in those early days of Catch, the MC, that was the headliner. That was
right. It was. I remember I used to go down to the city as a teenager, and it was Richard Belzer at Catch.
Belzer, and it was like Belzer's show, and it was the way it was his show, and we were all his guests.
Yep.
Yep. And I miss that because now these club people, all they get the least experienced person to MC, and they set the tone and they bring the audience back, and they're it's really your home base.
Yeah.
And I feel like people don't respect the MCs anymore. But I loved it then. It was, you were like, oh, I'm going to go see Belzer. He's MCing,
Yeah, even in Boston, it was the same thing. There were a handful of guys that I'm sure you knew some of them, Don Gavin and Steve Sweeney and those guys.
Yeah.
It was like Wednesday night was Don Gavin's night. No, Wednesday night was Sweeney and Meanie. It was Kevin Meany and Steve Sweeney on Wednesday nights at Stitches for 10 years. And they would go out and Kevin would leave the club. This was before the internet and technology. Somehow Kevin would go outside Stitches on Comm Ave, and he had some guy with a camera picking the size of a fucking Volkswagen on his shoulder, following Kevin in the street, and he'd have the microphone, and he would do almost like a Billy in the Street kind of thing. He would just harass people, and the people in the club were losing their minds. It was the funniest thing anybody had ever seen. And then you had Thursday night was Anthony Clark, and Friday night was Kenny Rogerson.
Anthony Clark?
He made $8 billion and then kind of retired. He was on, he did.
Yeah, he was on all those sitcoms.
The crazy thing about Anthony Clark is he left Boston and immediately went into cool indie films. Like he did like 2 or 3 movies with River Phoenix. Then he went on Broadway with
I remember.
Grapes of Wrath with the Steppenwolf Company.
I know.
And
I can't believe it. I haven't thought about him in forever.
He had the pedigree of a guy who could go on and be like a great indie actor, but then he started booking sitcoms that were paying him $100,000 an episode, and he just did 2 or 3 of those and fucking called it a day.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's fucking amazing. I mean, those days, yeah, and people don't. First of all, I do want to say something because I'm on your podcast. You know, we put up with a lot. The women, even though I'm not one of these people who's like, it's really hard for women. I mean, it's hard for women to do everything, but you know, we put up with a lot of shit and listen to a lot of shit. I don't care. But I remember, you know, Susie Essman and I always would say, you know, Fitzsimmons is so, like, you were always so nice to us, to the women, and respectful and not like a fucking asshole.
Oh,
Always.
that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, we used to say that all the time.
Thank
you. Know, there were so many guys who were just, they hate, you know, it's so weird when you're a female headliner, in the early 90s. And I'd go to these gigs because, you know, we never got to work together. Like, that's the thing people don't realize.
Yeah.
We never, ever were on the same show. We never went on the road together because they never put more than one woman on a show. And all the guys were like buddies. And a lot of times, you know, if you were a headliner and you were female and you walk into a club on the road, like the other guy comics were so resentful, you know, and they try to fuck and do like filthy shit. But you were always, we used to say that all the time.
Well, thank you. And you guys were, you know, coming to New York and meeting female comics like you and Susie, Wanda Sykes.
Oh, yeah.
Just strong females that were fucking killing like nobody else. I mean, nobody was killing a Catch a Rising Star like you and Susie Essman. You just tear the place apart and then come off stage and be just as funny. And I was like, it was just this camp of people. And you guys were kind of in like the Louis Ferranda VIP club.
Oh,
there was there was like the people that were really in. And, you know, and you guys always welcomed me into, not that I was in that circle, but I always felt welcome.
But you were just nice. You were like, you know, there were so many people who were fucking assholes. And
who is the biggest asshole?
Oh,
you can say it.
I don't know. I just think of people on the road. I remember there was one club owner in Arizona. Was it Tucson?
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
I never, like, if you're going to book me at your club, he put on like a filthy music act before me.
That guy loved bearing the headliner. He was famous for that. He used to do it on purpose. His name was Dan. I'm not going to say his last name.
You know, like, it's hard enough that I have to leave my fucking family
Right.
and I'm away from home. Why do you have to make my life even harder and more? And I thought, oh, he hates me because I'm a Jew or I'm gay. But, you know, like, literally set up the show so that I would fail.
Yeah, right.
I think that was one of the worst. Like, don't own a club if you're going to be a fucking asshole.
Boston used to do that to comedians also. The New York comics would go up to Boston. And again, like, it was mostly because Don Gavin or whatever would be the headliner. They weren't trying to fuck over the comics, but they did put the heavy hitters on before.
You know, I have to say there were a lot of Boston comics and they would go back and forth, and there were a lot of New York comics that would go back and forth. And Boston, you had to be a fucking great comic, like Kowloon's, like all those places. Yep. You had to fucking know how to work a room and be fucking funny. And you know, there were like you got a lot of stage time in Boston too.
Tons of stage time. And speaking of trying to fuck me,
they were picky about who they wanted on there. And I loved the Boston Com. I loved it. But I think because they were like, oh, she's one of us, you know. But yeah. If you did well, you got embraced. It was a very kind of, Boston is very clannish. It's very Irish and Italian and union. It's a union town. Yeah.
And you're either in or you're out. And so, and the Kowloon, which was a club, It was I think they would
Chinese
call
restaurant.
it a Polynesian.
Yeah, Polynesian, yeah.
And so people would be drinking booze out of giant wooden bowls.
Oh, my God.
And it was supposed to be like 4 people with straws each. Not there. 1 bowl per person with a fucking straw. And the guy that ran the room, it was Thanksgiving. And you remember this, when you're coming up and you got a paid gig, it could be your fucking brother's wedding. And you were like,
Right.
Can't go to the wedding. I finally got a Saturday night spot at Catch a Rising Star. So I get booked at the Kowloon to MC. And I said to my parents, I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving because it's Thanksgiving weekend. My family got in a car and they drove up to Boston and they came to the show, and the room manager, and I am not making this up, the show had started and I was like, why is the front row empty? And I start the show, 5 minutes in, the door opens, the manager comes in and he smiles at me, and then he leads in 8 people that have intellectual disabilities. And he seats them in the front row, and they're laughing at the setups, and, they're having a blast, but the whole timing is thrown off. And my family thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen in their life. I bombed.
I thought you were going to say he sat your family in the front row, which would be even more torturous.
Yeah, right.
But, you think about all those days, like, there was such camaraderie and such a work ethic where you had your fucking notebook, you had your jokes. Remember they used to set up auditions for like for the Montreal Festival, or for like SNL, for anything.
Yep.
And it was like you that was it. That was your one shot. There was no filming and redoing. It didn't matter if the audience fucking sucked. That was it. You had to do it live. And it's like, it's so much different now. And you did your work.
Yeah.
You fucking, like, I talk about this a lot on my podcast, but remember being on the road and there was no computer, there was no cell phone, there were, you couldn't use the phone in the hotel because it would eat up your entire fucking salary.
Right. Yeah.
I used to travel with a junk drawer. Like, I had one suitcase that was my fucking junk drawer full of like books, and like I brought my clarinet. I mean, it was torture. It was fucking torture.
Torture for you. What about the person in the room next to you while you're playing fucking clarinet?
That's funny.
No, yeah, I remember those showcases, man. I hadn't thought about that until you just said it. That was like, it was always like a Tuesday night when the club was fucking dead, and it was like evening at the Improv or Comedy on the Road or somebody. Even sometimes it would be like
walk in, like you knew you were on. This is what people don't realize. Like, you'd walk in, and then you'd look at the list to see what time you were on.
Yeah.
And like, if you were at the end, you had to fucking hang out there all night, and you couldn't change your spot. Like, that was it. The club booker was like, "Sorry, if you had a shitty spot." Remember Tuesdays? Tuesdays is when Catch a Rising Star. They would call you to tell you, all right, you'd call in and leave a voice message. Hi, it's Judy Gold. I'm available Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you'd sit around and wait on Tuesday afternoon to see if they fucking called.
Right.
And we're like, okay, you've got a 9:30, and you're like, oh my God. And then you call your friends and be like, did you get anything? It was so different. Fucking different.
Yep. And I remember with those showcases, I used to do a lot of colleges back then. And so I was off in the Midwest somewhere, and I had like a Wednesday college, a Thursday college, and then a Sunday college. And so I was just going to stay in a hotel, had my rent-a-car, and then Boston Comedy had a showcase for the Comedy Central half-hour comedy hour. And I had no TV credits, and I was dying for a credit, and I felt so ready. And so I asked to be on it, and then Jason Steinberg said, okay, you're on the line, you're on the showcase. So I booked a flight from fucking Des Moines, Iowa, back to New York for a night to do it, and then flying back to Des Moines. I get to the Boston Comedy Club, I look at the lineup, I'm not on it. I go, Jason, What happened? And he goes, oh, sorry, man, I couldn't fit you. Jay Moore wanted to do it. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
My fucking...
So I was like about to cry, and then he finally said, I'll put you on at the end of it. And like, they were gone. They were gone before the end of it. But that's what you did back then. People don't know the sacrifices that we went through early on, how fucking hungry we were, but then how good it felt. Every time you got one of those breaks and you felt like now you're Adrian Tulsh, you're on that level now.
Right. And the thing was, we were prepared.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like now it's like you do a fucking YouTube video and it gets 1 million views and the club owner's like, oh, okay, we're going to book that one.
Right.
And they can't do 40 minutes. They can't do 45 minutes. They can't do a half an hour.
No, that girl who was doing the Trump, you know those viral videos that are so funny of that girl and she plays Trump talking and then she
does, Sarah Cooper.
Okay, so Sarah Cooper, probably a good comic. She's been doing it for 5 years.
Right.
She has a 1 hour special on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm sending them a tape. I've been doing it 30 years. I can't get fucking looked at.
Hello? They told me I don't fit their algorithm. I don't fit the algorithm. I guess over 50.
Yeah.
And vagina. I don't fit the. It's like there's no algorithm. You're either fucking funny or you're not.
Yeah.
Fucking, look,
exactly.
But I remember one time. This is so. I remember. So Caroline's, which is on Broadway. First they were in Chelsea. Then they moved to the Seaport where they filmed Caroline's Comedy Hour. And then they moved to Broadway. So when they were at Chelsea, remember Joe Falzano?
Yeah.
Okay. He was booking it and I had a spot on the weekend. So my parents come in with their friends and they're going to come see the show. So we get to I walk in, I meet them in front. We walk in and Joe's like, you're not on the show tonight. And I'm like, I have a 10:40 spot or whatever the fuck it was. No. And he didn't. It was heart wrenching.
Yeah.
That my parents came in for dinner with their friends, and then they were going to see me and fucking Falzarano. Yeah.
Yep. No, and it was like, it was constant humiliation. And the thing is about being a comedian is if you go into a real company, you start off, you're in sales. Then you become a sales manager. Then you become a regional director. Like you get titles, you get a bigger office. With a comedian, you could be you. You were probably doing really well at that point. And then, but that night, you got no fucking title. You got no status. Your family sees you as a failure.
Yeah, it's like you can get a fucking HBO special, kill it, and then 2 nights later, someone bumps you on, at some fucking shitty comedy club.
Right.
You're like, with stand up, there's always a, don't get too comfortable.
Right.
You're just as good as your last show.
Well, and it's also, I think, with time, you start to figure out your landscape, and you don't try to fight for everything that's out there. Like I can remember early on, like Jim Gaffigan would get a fucking beer commercial that ran for a year and he was making 6 figures. And I was like, why didn't I get that?
Right.
And then you see, Judah Friedlander gets an indie film and you go, why didn't I get that? And you got to, after a while, you stop and go, because I wasn't going for that. Because that's not what I do.
Because it wasn't, It's like, it's like you're either, it takes so long to realize that it's not about you.
Right. Right.
You think it's about you. And it's never about you.
Yeah.
I mean,
like you found your niche. Like you go to Provincetown for a few months every summer. You do your fucking theater show. You do it exactly the way you want it. You come to New York. You did an off-Broadway show.
I did too. Yeah. I wrote a book. Like, you know what? If you're not going to give me, it's not going to be an easy ride for me. And it is an easy ride for some people. You're not going to stop. That's what's so great about stand-up. No one can stop you from doing it.
Right.
as you could be the star of a fucking sitcom 1 year, everyone fucking loves you, and the next year it's like, who?
Yep.
But you can go to the club. You always have your club to go to. Like actors who can't get work, what do? We can always get up and do sets.
Yep.
I mean, it's yeah.
And
But
every time you write that new piece of material, I mean, I've been doing it 30 years, and when I've got a new piece of material, I've got a buzz about me.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like it
it's
affects my
amazing.
mood all day
Right.
when I
You're
know
like,
I'm going to go.
I can't wait to get on stage and do that thing.
Yeah.
I know. It's so fun.
Yeah.
But that's because we're real. There were so many people who did. That was the other thing. That was the other side of the coin, was the people who did stand up to get something else. You know, that was they would literally put together a, 8 to 12 minute set, which was a pitch for a sitcom. Like, oh God, my mother and my, my great grandfather and and that was and they would just do it over and over until someone gave them a development deal. Instead of, I just wanted to fucking be a great comic.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of which, let's transition into talking about your book, which I read most of.
Okay.
Literally well, it's called Yes, I Can Say That. When They Come for the Comedians, We Are All in Trouble. And the one-line slug of what the book is it's basically an essay on the idea of censorship in comedy and who can say what when. And it's interesting because I think if you talk to 10 comics, every single one of them would have a different sort of line in the sand about what's acceptable, what's funny. And the only thing I've consistently found is, and it's something you say in the book, is you better make it funny. If you're going to go out there and you're going to tackle a topic that's controversial and makes people tense, you better relieve that tension with a good joke.
Exactly. Like Bill Burr did on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And so many people wrote to me, even Alicia.
I love that you like that monologue.
Oh my God, it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my gay friends was like, he was talking about gay pride. And I'm like, no, he wasn't. He was talking about fucking Black History Month. It was funny.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm like, aren't you like, isn't it enough in June? Like gay pride month, it's too much anyway, And then I loved the calling out the Karens.
Yeah.
I love that. And, and it's so interesting. Then you tell them, Bill's married to an African-American and his kids are mixed race. They're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
We speak truth to power, and the great comics talk about those uncomfortable things and then relieve the fucking tension with a great punchline.
Right.
So, but I don't believe in censorship at all. But I do believe that there are consequences, unfortunately, for, things you say. But I don't think that comedians should be held to a higher standard than fucking politicians who make laws, that affect you, whose speech incites violence. We're just trying to make you fucking laugh. And if you don't like us, change the fucking channel.
But, I was thinking about this because you talk about Lenny Bruce a lot. And, he's obviously, when you think about this topic, he is, probably the biggest pioneer of all time in comedy. He was arrested for things that he said. And nowadays, I would prefer to get arrested than to get canceled, which is what can happen as a comedian, where you can't fight back. It's flypaper.
Right.
Once you get labeled as you said something wrong, you just go away.
Right. And it's like being in a bad relationship where they bring up the same thing over and over and also to go back 10 years and say this person said this thing 10 years ago and we just uncovered it. No.
Right.
No. What the fuck? It's ridiculous. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd rather be arrested too. Than for someone to say you're done. You're done.
And especially when they're digging up stuff from the past, because the landscape does change. And the thing about stand-up comedy is it was born out of the idea that it's a bunch of people in a smoky room having drinks, and there's somebody who's got your attention, and he's creating an experience for you that's singular. And now that experience is being videotaped, put on the internet, quoted in blogs, and you can't
taken out of context.
Right.
There, look, if you take the intent of the comedian out, like what's the comedian's intent? Like, I don't know if I write about this, and I think I do write about this in the book, that if you murder someone and you're on trial for murder, your sentence is determined by your intent, right? And yet you can't take into consideration the intent of the comedian. Like with Bill Burr, what was his intent? He was calling out all those white women who sit in their fucking Range Rovers and put I'm against anti-Semitism, I'm against racism, Black Lives Matter on their Facebook page,
Yeah, right.
and yet do nothing. But I'm for, Black Lives Matter while my husband works at a hedge fund who has no black people. I'll take the money for,
Right. And it's also like if you look at the women's movement in the 60s, and there's a really great fucking series called Mrs. America. And it tracks how there was a schism between the black women in the movement and the white women essentially took over.
Right.
And I think that what he was talking about is this resurgence of that same dynamic.
Right. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And, the strongest women we have in this country are African-American women.
Yeah.
I mean, they are, look, I'm a lesy, white, Jewy woman. Took me a while to get the woman. I'm starting with more. I mean, as a white, even though, it's funny because you're Irish, we weren't white a while ago.
Right.
Before.
Not that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, not that long ago. We weren't. Now we're like, we're okay. You're okay. And so we already start with we got a little extra in our pocket, and that's what people don't fucking understand.
Right.
They're barriers that they have to overcome. The fact that we have not invested in the education, the public schools in a low income neighborhood. It's our fucking fault. And it's true. Racism is fucking awful. It's really bad.
It is. And when you talk about the Irish, there was Irish Need Not Apply was in the fucking 30s, and we were, Catholics were considered like we were in a cult. It was a fucking miracle that Kennedy was elected. And then as soon as we made some money and got some legitimacy, we went from Kennedy Democrats that were behind the Civil Rights Bill to this fucking onslaught of Irish people that are now in the Republican Party. McConnell
Racist.
and Flynn and Kelly. A lot of my cousins are Republicans now. And it's like, what happened to the idealism of being oppressed? And we lost it.
Look at all the Jews. We were the founders of NAACP. All the public school system, and now all of a sudden you're fucking pro-Trump. No, he's a fucking asshole.
Well, is it because they support Israel?
Israel. You don't live in Israel.
Right.
I love Israel, but I don't live there.
Yeah.
And there's plenty wrong with Israel, just like there's plenty wrong with our country.
Right.
But come on.
How did you feel about them moving Jerusalem or making Jerusalem the capital?
I feel like it was such a fucking, I don't know. I felt like, he didn't do it because he believes that, that should be where the embassy is and that is the capital of it. That, he didn't do it for that. He did it to get, his fucking vote. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
The whole thing is, you think about Israel. There are Arabs on the Knesset, you know? The women are equal. There's a gay pride parade. Women serve in the military. Gays serve in the you know, they're so far ahead of us on so many, and they're a democracy.
Yeah, they're the best democracy in the Middle East. Yeah.
Right. They're the only democracy. And they are our ally, and they do contribute a lot to the world at large. Like, you know, you think about Nobel
Tech
Prize
companies,
winners,
right.
tech, health, you know, like cancer treatments, just engineering. Like,
they've got a lot of green technology coming out of there now. My friend he runs the whole internet side of Turner in Atlanta, and he goes to Israel for all the tech stuff. He flies. He goes, everybody else is going to Silicon Valley. He goes, I go to Israel. I get the same work done for a tenth of the price. It's more innovative. He said they're so far ahead of us over there.
Right. And yet, if you hate Israel so much, then you should live without the contributions that they've made to the world. Like, you would have no clean water. You know, forget your fucking, you know, transplant, whatever organ you want transplanted. Forget using a cell phone. Just forget, you know, but yet, you know, it's the anti-Semitism is really bad.
So, I mean, just to get into the book more on that topic, like, you talk about how Jews can make fun of Jews, and you talk about the dynamic of, you know, the stereotypes about Jews, and they're overprotective of their kids, and it's like, yeah, because their kids were fucking taken from them during the Holocaust. You know, there's some basic stuff.
And before we've been kicked out of everywhere, yeah.
So you talk about how then you have an understanding of it, and that, because look, it's a hazy line. It changes. It's subjective. It's contextual. When is it okay to do a racial or racist, depending on your interpretation, joke? You know, I mean, do you have to be in that demographic?
Well, I think you have to. I mean, I have a chapter about just all about stereotypes, and that the fact is they didn't come out of thin air. They are part of our ancestry. They're a part of our history. So if you're going to use a stereotype to describe someone who has a stereotypical behavior of that joke is about that person. It's not about everyone. You're not saying, you know, every single person is like this. You're saying this person has you know, owns a little bit of stereotypical behavior, and I'm using it to describe them. It's not about you. Like, that's the thing. Comics don't. These people all think the fucking joke is about that. Oh my God, I'm offended. I'm offended. Right. I'm offended. No one was thinking about you when they wrote the joke. You know, if you're gonna, you know, the first quote in the book that starts the first chapter. Going to a comedy club and expecting not to get offended is like going on a roller coaster and expecting not to get scared.
Right.
You know?
And if you're going to a club where you're not being offended, it's a boring club. I mean, every club has a different identity. If you go to the Comedy Cellar in New York or the Comedy Store in LA, you're going to get some very aggressive people challenging normal beliefs. And also, you know, let's talk about Dave Attell, because you mentioned him in the book as being one of the best comics in the country, and I love him. I agree. But like, if you think about what he says, if you transcribe it and you put it in a blog, it feels indefensible. Now, when you sit in the club and you watch him say the same things, you realize that the statement he's making isn't like, you know, big corporations run the media, and that's why it's not that. It's basically saying the message is, I can say whatever I want because I'm making it funny, and it's almost like a celebration of freedom of speech.
Right. And it's the truth. It's his truth.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are his, you know, you have to have a point of view. This is his point of view. And, you know, look at him. He's like a fucking, like old Jewish guy now. You know, he's like, hey, he's just you can't translate that to a piece of fucking paper. And
Well,
plus,
because he's also playing a character. I mean, he was a salty old sailor. You know, he was a guy that talked about, having sex with a one-legged woman and just the most depraved scenarios. But you had to take it it's like with Kinnison. You have to take it in the context of that, like you said, this isn't about you. This is about him. Can we say Archie Bunker is saying this and it's that is the viewpoint of certain people, and it can be funny if you take it in that context.
And you humanize, like that's what comics do. They humanize this thing. Like I write about Don Rickles, who would never now forget it, but he had this caustic warmth, and he would insult if you were in the audience and didn't get insulted by him, you were like, oh fuck, he didn't pick on me, you know?
Yeah.
Now it would be like, how dare you? But what he was saying was, you're this, we're all the fucking same. We all have shit, you know? But forget it now.
Well, Lisa Lampanelli became a life coach, you know?
I know.
I think she was having a harder and harder time doing what she did, which is essentially what Rickles was doing.
Right.
Not saying she didn't steal from him. I'm just saying like that genre of comedy, insult comedy.
Yeah, but you know what? Look at Voss. Voss is an insult comic too.
Yeah.
And it's really depending on, Rickles, his vocabulary. You have to evolve. You have to grow. Look, your material from 30 years ago is not going to cut it now.
No.
And half the words you use and ideas you use, but. You have to evolve with it. I mean, there's so many. Look at Gaffigan. I mean, Gaffigan used to curse all the time.
Oh yeah, he was edgy. He was out there.
He was really edgy.
Yeah.
And then he was then branding. And he does have a degree in marketing, so he used it pretty well.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. And so then he branded himself this way, and then all of a sudden, what is it, a month or two ago, he can't take it anymore, and he starts like, I can't fucking take it. I mean, he's been holding it in for 4 years how much he hates Trump,
Right.
But yeah, I have a chapter about stereotypes, and then I have the chapter, there's a reason it's called an act, because it's an act.
Right. Even Burr said, if you were to interview me about one of my bits, he goes, after about 2 questions, I would say, okay, you're right. I don't even mean that. Like he's trying to push buttons because nobody is. He's trying to say
right.
He's trying to say that there are no sacred cows and that we should. I see this whole school of comedians that are reacting to the snowflake thing. It's not necessarily that they believe everything they're saying, but they're saying, fuck you, I'm gonna say it.
Right. I do it all the time. But I remember that, when we talk about Attell, he came up to me. We were at the Cellar. This is several months ago, because, of course, we haven't been there since fucking February. And he was like, Judy, I'm doing the, I think I'm doing this joke on my special or something, do you think I'm going to get in trouble? And I was like, oh my God, you?
I know.
You? No.
Yeah.
Say it. It's fucking funny. No one's going to,
No, he calls me once a month to ask me that question. And he's so caught up in the environment changing because Dave is the most sensitive, caring guy of any comedian. And so
I know. Like,
people don't realize that.
A happy birthday he's such a good guy.
Yep. I got a handwritten Christmas card with my kids' names in it, and so I think he knows exactly what the line is. He isn't a guy because you do talk about in your book that there are people that are bad for comedy because they abuse this license that we have to express ourselves, and they ruin it for the people that actually have something to say.
Shitty comics ruin it for the rest of us because you lower the bar. It's like, look what Trump did to the presidency. There's no character. Like, he really kind of shit on I'm going to behave this way. I'm going to, whatever. The office, I'm saying, the office of the presidency, it seems a little less classy now. But, when people are shitty at their jobs, it ruins it for other people who do the same, who have the same job.
You have to rebuild. You have to go up and rebuild after they're done.
Yeah.
And, so the book is
it's like an argument. The book is like a polemic. And I love stand-ups. I mean, I love it. And I love laughing. And here's the thing. If you don't, you gotta stop taking yourself so fucking seriously. It's like, comedy is so American. It's so, you think of music and you think of the arts, like all theaters, Shakespeare, and I feel like it's our one truly American, I don't know, I guess art form, but think about it. Bob Hope in 39 decides in 1939 he's gonna go visit troops, the military who are, overseas defending our country. And he's going to bring other comics along and other entertainers. And this has been going on for years. What other country sends comedians to make
ambassadors.
them fucking, to make them feel better? And no one.
Right.
Any other country has comics go to... No, it's so us. So when you start shutting down comics and satire, offensive comics and comics that are drawn. It's come on.
Yeah.
I know Trump, by the way, because I talk about Trump in the book, but I also talk about the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah.
They had a show and it was really controversial. They were hilarious, but they were really anti-Vietnam War. They were anti-Nixon. They were anti-Johnson, and they were canceled. And they used to, really crucify Johnson. And his daughters liked the show, but he hated it. And he called the head of CBS. He was like, "Can you ask them to just calm it down? I mean, I'm not saying." And CBS was like, "Can you just take it a little easy?" And they said, "Okay, we'll take it easy if you let us have what's his name, the folk singer who wasn't Pete Seeger. If you let us have Pete Seeger, he's a folk singer on." And he was so controversial, and he wasn't allowed on TV. He was banned. Yeah. So they're like, "Oh, he's a folk singer? Okay, sure." So they put him on, and then of course they get canceled.
Yeah.
And after they were canceled, Lyndon Johnson wrote the Smothers Brothers a letter saying, "Listen, it wasn't easy. It was hard for me sometimes, but being president, it's part of my job to be fodder for satire and for comedy, and it was my honor, and I wish you all the best and whatever." Can you imagine Trump writing a letter like that? Like, he wanted SNL investigated. You can't have a comedian at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter what side you're on politically. Like Clinton was a fucking gold mine for us.
Yes. Yeah.
It didn't matter. It never mattered what side you were on if you were making fun of a president. And all of a sudden, for the last 4 years, you make a joke about his hair, and his followers are like, "Fuck you, you're a foot," and it's like, oh my god,
I know.
really?
It's the first time I have avoided it because for a lot of reasons. One of them is I feel like there's an exhaustion from it, and when I go to a club and I bring it up, I feel like I don't know that I have an angle on it that hasn't already been done, and I also feel like it brings up an energy that's I did political jokes about every president since I've been doing it. But with him, I feel like you said, it brings up an energy that's distracting from the comedy. It's too serious.
It's polarizing. And it's because he can't take a fucking joke. Like Obama
And the funny thing is, he's a comedian. I really believe a big reason why he has such a following is he makes jokes.
Right. You see the way he stands there with his fucking rally. If he gets a laugh on something, he's like, it's like a peacock with the yeah. And then I said, fuck it, and then he'll do it at the next rally. And then, he's a hack. Yeah. He's a shitty comic. But like Obama, he was hilarious. He would fucking make fun of himself.
I mean, him at the Correspondents' Dinner, he was as good as any comic I've ever seen as a roast.
I agree. I wrote in the book, if any president was going to be a comic, it should be, he was fucking hilarious. But you think about it, like Lenny Bruce, we were talking about in the beginning, he got arrested for cursing, but they really wanted him on the fact that he was talking about, segregation and the Vietnam War and the government and, but they got him on the cursing. And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
How far have we come? It's fucking ridiculous. I know. It's really hard. I got canceled from a lot of gigs because of my politics.
Really?
Yes, I got canceled from the Huntington Jewish Center on Huntington, Long Island. I just did a show in Israel, and then the Israeli Times, they were like, oh, we'd love to talk to Judy about blah, blah, blah. And then my publicist is like, they never called back. And I go, they probably figured out I hate Trump. It was never like that. No one cared.
No.
You'd have like Randy Credico go up and be like a total commie. And then you'd have, Colin go up. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's become unhealthy. So anyway, to change topics for that exact reason, let's talk about your podcast a little bit. It's called the Kill Me Now podcast with your co-host, Lauren Hennessy.
I have no co-host, so whatever you have there is bullshit.
Who's Lauren Hennessy?
Lauren was my, now it's just Hennessy. He transitioned. He's a man, but I haven't had a co-host for a while.
All right, we need to update your bio that gets sent out to me. It's the one that got sent to me.
From whom?
I don't know. Whoever sent me your bio and your book.
What the fuck?
I don't know. That could be wrong. I might have gotten it off of Wikipedia. You know what? I think I did. I think I got it off Wikipedia. By the way, who prepares for a podcast better than me? I read your fucking book. I read the promos that get sent over.
Let me tell you
I go to Wikipedia.
I read all my guest books.
Yep.
I always prepare, and they're always like, wow, you did your research, but thank you for doing that.
Of course. Well, I love you.
I love you.
How's the Friars Club? A lot of controversy over there,
I know. I haven't been. I have not been there.
There was embezzlement. There was malfeasance. There was infighting.
There was the and then there was the woman who sat at the front desk who was sexually harassed. And
Was it Caroline?
No.
Oh.
No, I forgot.
There was that woman, Caroline, who was beautiful, who was there for a long time. I think my brother might have hooked up with her, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yeah. But
Did your dad go to the Friars Club?
My father was the scribe. He was on the board of governors for like 20 years.
So you used to go there as a kid?
I was there for the 76 Olympic hockey team when they won the Miracle Hockey team. I was there for the OJ chase. I was in the Milton Borough room watching OJ get chased in the Bronco. I mean, I was there every weekend for brunch. My father, he was the token Irish guy. It was all Jews, and he used to have a St. Patrick's Day party there every year, and Freddie Roman and Malzy Lawrence and Dick Capri, all those guys would come, and they'd have Irish soda bread, and they would watch the Irish step dancers, and he loved that place. And so when I moved to New York in like 93, Freddie Roman was my sponsor. And I used to go there every day. I'd go work out and I'd shoot pool.
Yeah, we used to work out. I used to work out in the gym.
Yeah, right.
And they would have the person sitting in the locker room. I was like, oh, please.
I know.
Remember that? I was like, ugh, this is too much.
The guy in the men's room, you would go in, and he was from Yugoslavia. And does that exist anymore?
Dar, does Yugoslavia exist anymore? No.
No.
Go ahead.
So he was from the former Yugoslavia, and you would go into the shower, not making this up. You would come out of the shower, and he'd be waiting with a towel, and he would dry you.
No fucking way.
He would dry you. And then first you go into the steam room, and he'd come in with a towel with ice cubes on it and a glass of cold water.
No way.
And then you would sit in there, and then you go in the shower, and then he'd dry you off from the shower.
Yeah, the guys had a way better locker room because women weren't allowed in there. And then there was that area between the gym and the guys' locker room where there were these big fucking Barca-lounger chairs.
Yeah.
And everyone would sit around in their fucking robe. And then the women came in and ruined it for you. Well, too bad.
They would smoke cigars, and they'd have variety. You'd read variety, and try to, and these guys would try to book a gig. But you got a lot of gigs out of there. You used to work for like Ruth Stern and all those people, right? Oh my
God, Ruth Stern!
Yeah.
Yes.
She was from Germany, and she was in
the Kinder, what is it called? The Kinder, she's outside chopping wood. This is such a fucking dyke household. I can't even tell you. The Kinderport, where they took the little kids.
Oh, no shit.
Yes. And she would never talk about it. And she was so obnoxious, and her husband, Paul, was deaf. So, that's how that marriage worked.
She was the most reviled person, and yet you had to kiss her ass because she had these high-paying gigs.
She had all the good gigs. And this is what she would do. This is how she would, not pay you enough money. She's like, Judy, Angela Greca does the best one, but Judy, I have a gig for you. I call the country club, and and I said, oh, good. Is it a lot of money? Well, I called them. I said, mention your name. They said, Judy who? And that's how she would make it. She would say, I called, I tried to get the money you wanted, but I said, Greg who? And it was
great.
She would just make you feel like shit, and then she would pocket all the money. They would pay like $20,000,
Yeah, and she'd keep 15
I'd be like, well, how come I'm only getting $2,000? Well, I called. I said, Judy. Oh my God, those characters.
Oh my God, yeah, they were the best. And walking into that dining room for lunch, I mean,
Henny Youngman.
It was alive. Henny Youngman would sit there, and you'd come over. Yeah, and he'd make fun of you. He'd do a bunch of jokes. And then, if you ate with Freddie, you'd see him for 5 minutes because the rest of the time he was working the room.
Walking around.
Yeah.
I remember I used to go in, and Henny would sit in that one table in the corner, and and he'd be by himself. Then all of a sudden I'd look over, and he'd have like a knife coming out of his, his coffee mug, or he'd he would put a fork in his watch. It would just do this and just sit there nothing was going on. That place. Yeah.
I remember the last time I saw Henny Youngman, and God, I really wonder with my listeners how many of them know who Henny Youngman is.
Henny Youngman, yeah.
He was one of the quintessential great comics of all time.
Yeah.
All one-liners. He was totally ahead of the time with people like Stephen Wright or Mitch Hedberg or people that did non-sequitur one-liners.
Right.
And he came out, and he was in his 80s, late 80s, and he was in a wheelchair at this point.
Yeah.
And I was doing a show at the... I can't remember the theater, on the Upper East Side. And all of a sudden, Henny's sitting in the front row in his wheelchair, and we're all performing, and it's fucking Jeff Ross and a bunch of people. And then Freddie's hosting, and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, Henny Youngman. And we're like, how the fuck is he going to get up on this stage, which is 6 feet high? And they roll his wheelchair towards the stage. They don't even turn it around. They hand him a microphone, and he does 10 minutes of perfect jokes. Nails it. The place is fucking dying, and he gets a standing ovation that he couldn't even see because he had his back to the audience. It was punk rock. It was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
All right, listen, Judy, we got to go.
Yeah. Why? Because you're busy? All
Can we
right,
do
love
this?
you.
Can we do it part
I'll do
2?
Yeah. We
Let's
could
do-
do a part 2. You could do my podcast.
Yeah, I'll come on your podcast. That'll be part 2.
All right.
I want to
look
remind
at this.
people the book is called Yes, I Can Say That. When they come for the comedians, we
Can you
are
tell them
all
how-
in trouble.
Can you tell them how good it is? It really is. It's
Judy,
such a-
I couldn't put it down. I started it at like 5 o'clock, and at 1:30 in the morning, I finally closed my computer and stopped reading.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just because I'm a comic. It really is. It's an essay. It's got a point of view. It explores. It builds really in a really smart way. It builds the argument, and I love it. If you're a comedy fan in any way, you'll love this book.
Yeah, and thank you. And the history, I love doing the research of the history. It was fucking, yeah. That
Yeah,
was
like Mom's
fascinating for me.
Mabley. I didn't really know
Yeah.
that much about Mom's Mabley. I mean,
There's just so
one of
many-
7 kids who was raped twice and started going on the road when she was 14, and crazy.
I know.
So
All right.
anyway, all
I
right,
miss
Judy,
you.
you're the best. I wish I could
You
be there
are.
to hug you and
Mwah,
touch
you
you
too.
and all that. Okay,
All right.
we'll
Smell
talk to you
ya.
soon. Bye.
So long.